Well, hello everyone. I want to welcome you this afternoon to our freestanding applique projects by Oklahoma Embroidery Supply and Design. My name is Dawn Andrew. I'm the embroidery specialist. We are going to look at several things this afternoon. First of all, we want to talk about freestanding lace, the difference between freestanding lace and freestanding applique. Also, just as we get started, there is a chat box on your display area, so if you have questions or you can't hear me right now, then please let us know, and we will be checking and also answering questions at the end as well. So the first thing that we want to talk about and look at is the difference between freestanding lace and freestanding applique projects. In the thread charts of our designs, you will see that it has either FSL, which means freestanding lace, or FSA, which is referring to freestanding applique. With the freestanding lace, it works with thread and your wash-away stabilizer only. Those are the only two items that you basically need. And in regards to wash-away stabilizer, I would recommend that you use a heavyweight clear wash-away stabilizer, or another one that I like to work with is a mesh wash-away stabilizer. You'll want to use either one of those. We do want to use 2 layers of stabilizer, especially when we start working with our freestanding applique projects. But even some of the wash-away things, I still like ornaments and things like that, I will still go ahead and use 2 layers. If you're working with a clear heavyweight or a clear type wash-away stabilizer, and during the stitching process the needle is perforating that and the stitches are being pulled away, then that's a good indication that you need to use more than 1 layer of stabilization. The other, also going on to our freestanding lace, we like to use the same thread in the bottom, in the bobbin area, and that is so that if it's like an ornament or something like that, there's no difference in the right or wrong side. So use your same thread in the top and bottom. Then you're going to hoop your stabilizer, stitch your color or colors if it's more than 1 color of thread, remove your project from the hoop, trim around your excess stabilizer, and rinse away your remaining stabilizer. And usually I just take it over to the sink, wash it out, place it on a paper towel, or even sometimes I've used wax paper or something like that. And I can kind of shape it if I want to during the drying process somewhat, but then you're going to leave it out. I let mine dry overnight usually, so that by the next day it's completely dry. One of the projects that we actually, or one of the design collections we just released today, is the freestanding lace mistletoe, and that's an example of freestanding lace. You will see that there's a bow piece and a center section that goes over the bow, and then there's a couple different strands of the mistletoe part itself, and you stitch those out. So in the instructions are complete instructions on how many to stitch out and how to have your freestanding mistletoe. It's a really nice collection, 12551, and it is available on embroideryonline.com. Or you can also go to embdesignstudio.com. So that's what the butterfly is up here representing. So if you shop in a local store, then you can purchase your designs basically through their store. They'll receive credit for that, and that's through embdesignstudio.com. The other option, or the other item, or what we're going to look at then, is the freestanding applique. With the freestanding applique, you have fabric that you're going to work with for the applique part of the design, and we're going to talk about in depth about how we prepare our fabric here. We've come up with a really good technique, and we believe that it helps our freestanding structures like houses, and we just released a gingerbread house. We're going to talk about some of those things where we have been releasing recently. And so we like to use heavyweight stabilizer, a cutaway type stabilizer, whether it be just a heavyweight or a sticky backed, on the fabric first, and then your thread and your wash away stabilizer. You hoop you use the same thread in the bottom also, so it's the same on both sides. And the hooping the stabilizer, again, I like to use 2 layers of either a mesh wash away stabilizer or the heavyweight wash away stabilizer. So either one of those, I'm going to use, again, 2 layers. And we're going to go into the depth and look at a project in just a moment, but just to kind of give you an overview of how a freestanding applique is stitched, it's going to be just like an applique, but you're working on a wash away stabilizer. So the first thing that we're going to do is stitch a placement stitch, and then you'll place your prepared fabric over that placement stitch. Then it stitches what's called a cut line and a tack down stitch, and in some of our collections you will also find there will be a cut out section, and we'll talk about that in more depth. Then we're going to carefully trim away our excess applique fabric only, then stitch the remainder of the design, and if there's any other appliques in that collection, then again it will give you a placement stitch and then a cut line and a tack down stitch. After you're completely done with your design, you remove it from the hoop. You're going to trim away your excess stabilizer, and then again rinse away your remaining stabilizer. So they're very similar as far as freestanding lace and freestanding applique. The big difference is we are working with an applique using fabric and working with a placement stitch and cut line and tack down stitch. So we're going to look in more depth of how the freestanding applique works. And again, remember that the FSL stands for freestanding lace, so that's going to be just completely thread and wash away stabilizer. And the FSA is freestanding applique. All right, this is a freestanding lace angel that is a combination of both lace and applique. It's going to be releasing next Wednesday, November 19th. And in the project, you will see fabric here on the front part of the angel and down here at the bottom. And then on the wings are pieces of fabric as well. That's satin fabric that is placed there, and so it will have a placement stitch, it will have a cut line and a tack down stitch. Alright, the next one is the freestanding gingerbread house. It was released Monday, pack number 12512 for $29.99. It's what we refer to as a structure. The structures are going to be pieces of fabric, again, that we're going to prepare our fabric for. And you are going to have areas that you're going to cut out. So you'll have some little window pieces that you cut out, as well as then a cut line, so you'll be cutting along the edges of the fabric as well. Then there'll be another applique, because you see the front door is red, so that will be on there as well. And then there's some little items that are done separate, and then you can glue them on or stitch them on the gingerbread house. This is a fun project that you can do, and it involves freestanding applique. Now the gingerbread house also has a couple pieces here that you see in the front that's completely lace, so there's no fabric in that at all. But the rest of it all involves using your fabric as your applique. The Christmas Village, all of the Christmas Village pieces are also done this way as well, and this month we released the Schoolhouse with the Well, pack number 12518, also retailing for $29.99. We have it in the white and the off-white satin fabrics to coordinate with the rest of the Christmas Village, but we also did it in colors, so you can use regular cotton fabrics for the red fabric and then gray for the top of the roof. Another fairly new collection that came out this fall is called the Freestanding Pumpkin Patch, and you'll notice that it also works with fabric in most of the pieces or in most of the pumpkins. So we're going to actually work with one of the pumpkins today because it's more round, and so we want to talk about how to keep its nice shape, how to have the best pieces here so they're not wrinkly, and how they can be more sturdier and stand up longer. So that's what we're going to actually stitch out today, is the autumn pumpkin from that collection, pack number 12516. We're going to look at the step-by-step instructions for how to do that. We're going to gather our files for this pumpkin, and this pumpkin, when you look at your instructions, look at the list as to which pieces to utilize. We're going to work with the file number 06. We're going to stitch out 6 of those. That happens to be the panels, the outer panels for the pumpkin to give it its shape. 07 is going to be the base, which is the bottom piece. 08 is the stems, and there's 2 of those. 3 are stitched in one, 3 of them are in one file, and there's 6 of them, so we're going to stitch that out twice. We have the leaf, which is 09, and the vine, which is a spiral vine, which is number 10. So we're going to use those files to make our pumpkin. Now the other thing that we're going to do is prepare our fabrics and gather our embroidery supplies. So let's talk just a minute about what supplies we're going to need, and then we're going to discuss in depth how we're going to prepare our fabric so that we have the best results. So gather our supplies. So we're going to use a piece of fabric. In this case, I'm working with a white piece of fabric. I'm going to work with a sticky back cutaway stabilizer, and I'm going to need several pieces of it, or if you can also get it on the roll. We have it in pieces, so I'm going to gather several pieces of it. Another option to use instead of the sticky back cutaway stabilizer for the back side of your fabric is to use a heavyweight cutaway stabilizer. It's not sticky, so you'll want to use your temporary spray adhesive and spray it in between your 2 layers of heavyweight cutaway, spray the stabilizer, and place it on the back of your fabric. We're going to use the sticky back cutaway stabilizer instead of that. So one or the other, though, will work. Then you also want your wash away stabilizer, and with your wash away there's a mesh type, or you can use the heavyweight wash away stabilizer. You'll need 2 layers for each hooping, so be sure you have plenty of that on hand. Also be sure you have plenty of thread because we want to use it in the top and in the bottom, so make sure you have plenty of thread. The designs are digitized for a 40 weight thread, embroidery thread, and we work with a polyester embroidery thread. So 40 weight polyester embroidery thread, I have plenty of it, and I like to use a small pair of scissors that are pretty sharp and pointed, and they also are double curved, and that's what I like to use for trimming around my fabrics and trimming inside whenever I have to cut out pieces, and then just trimming all my little threads and things like that. Then when we start to put our pumpkin together or our structure together, I also like to work with a pair of alligator clamps, and we'll look at what those look like in a little bit. Okay, so I think we have all of our fabrics and all of our supplies gathered up. So now let's start working. You'll see on this picture we have the sticky back cutaway stabilizer, so the paper backing is being peeled away and it becomes tacky. So we're going to place it sticky side down onto the wrong side of my fabric. So this is a picture of one layer of your sticky back cutaway stabilizer on the wrong side of your fabric. Then we're going to take another layer of the sticky back cutaway stabilizer, peel off the paper backing, and place it down on top of that other piece of cutaway. So now up here at the top we have our fabric with our two pieces of sticky back cutaway on the back of it. Okay, so it's now ready for our applique. So I like to do that all in advance, get all my fabric ready so that when I sit down to the embroidery machine, I've got it ready to go. Now the first thing that we do is hoop our 2 layers of mesh wash away. Now you do realize that there's also a mesh cutaway, and there is a difference between the two. So when I was working in a store location, we actually had a customer that had some of her mesh cutaway and mesh wash away, did not have it labeled in her sewing area or in her embroidery where she keeps her stabilizers. And we got a phone call that she had been stitching and making freestanding lace ornaments and was unable to remove the stabilizer. And it was because she picked up the wrong stuff and she used the cutaway versus the wash away. So be sure that you are indeed choosing the wash away stabilizer. And that's what we have hooped here is 2 layers of the mesh wash away. And it's going to first stitch the first color, which is called a background placement stitch. So this is going to show us where we need to place our fabric that we've prepared. Now, as we are continuing to stitch this design out, I actually have 2 slides that are going to be side by side, and one of them is going to have no stabilizer on it whatsoever. It's just the fabric. We want to show what happens when you just use your fabric only. And then over here on this side we have the fabric below has been prepared with your 2 layers of your sticky back cutaway stabilizer as we talked about. So you're going to place your fabric over that background placement stitch. Be sure that it covers it completely. You're going to stitch the next color, which is called the background cut line, the tack down, and cutouts. So it's going to stitch where you have 2 rows of stitching to help hold that fabric in place. And so we've stitched it in, we've stitched it, and so now we're ready to do our trimming. So we'll take the hoop off the embroidery machine. Please do not take, at this point, don't take your stabilizer and everything out of the hoop, because it'll be very difficult to get it re-hooped exactly like you need it. So you're going to take your hoop off the embroidery machine and trim away the extra fabric, the excess fabric, and you're also going to trim out these little cutout areas. So trim inside those areas just as close to the stitching lines as you possibly can get. And we've done that on both places. Then you're going to put your hoop back on the embroidery machine and finish stitching out your design. In some of the freestanding applique structures, like the gingerbread house, you may be doing this process a couple times. It will have the wall placement and then it will have a door placement. So you may be doing this a couple times in one of the processes, so kind of keep that in mind. You're going to finish stitching out all of your pumpkin pieces. So this is the side panel pieces. We're going to stitch out 6 of those. We're going to stitch out our stems, stitch out the bottom, the base, which the base is also has the prepared fabric with the 2 layers of cutaway as well. The stems are just completely freestanding lace, so there's no fabric in the stems, the leaf, or the vine, so you don't need to worry about fabrics in those, but you will need enough for your 6 panels and for the base or the bottom of the pumpkin. You're going to trim away all of your excess stabilizer, rinse it out, and then allow the pieces to completely dry. And as I stated before, I like to do this at home in the kitchen sink and just let the warm water just run over it. You don't want to have scalding water, but warm water works well. I don't like to use cold water either. The warm water does a better job of rinsing out the stabilizer. And then I get paper towels or wax paper or something like that and place it down, and then I kind of shape my pieces as I lay them out, making sure that there's no flipping or anything that I don't want to happen. I also shaped my leaf during this process as well, and the vine, it's a spiral, so it will mostly curl on its own, so you don't really need to do a whole lot with it. Now, this is these are pictures of our fabrics that don't have any stabilizer on them at all. So you can see that this is the front piece and this is the back piece. There is no stabilizer, it's completely just fabric. And because of the type of stitching and everything that it has on it, it does have a few puckers, but because there's no stabilizer behind it, the fabric itself is wrinkling a little bit more. On this next slide, we have pieces that do have the 2 pieces or 2 layers of sticky back cutaway stabilizer. This is the front side, and this is the back side. So you can see it looks white also, but that's actually the back. And then this is the front, which is the paper side. So it looks a lot smoother. So to build your pumpkin, you want to gather all of your pieces and your alligator clamps. And down here is a picture of the alligator clamps. The little tip part here is going to be the place that opens. So you're going to, in order to assemble your pumpkin, you work with first of all, a stem piece and one of the pumpkin pieces. And there are 2 buttonettes on the of the stem that you're going to place into the eyelets or the holes of the top of the pumpkin piece, and then you repeat that, and then you attach the pumpkin base to one of the pumpkin stem sections, and then we'll start putting together the round pieces, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Now this is starting our pumpkin with just the fabric only. So you can kind of see the results of it. If we were to continue to put it together, it would have some wrinkly areas, and so that's what happens with just utilizing fabric. But if you want better results, then we want to work with our fabric that has our 2 layers. So here is the stem section. So it has little buttonettes here and here, and they are placed into the top eyelets of each of the pumpkin panels. And then the pumpkin panel is placed to the bottom piece, and then these side pieces are all put together. Now, the side pieces, you can easily, as you're building this, you can go from the inside and pull the little buttonettes through the little eyelets so that you don't see them on the outside until you get to the very last one, and it's going to be more difficult to do it from the inside, so I usually just have 1 row that's along the outer edge that the little buttonettes are going to show on the outside. But for the most part, most of them you can pull them from the inside so that they're not being shown, as you see here. So this is a pumpkin with your 2 layers of cutaway stabilizer, and we have found over the years that this method works best to have a sturdier structure, and it will also last longer. And it looks nicer because there's no puckering of your fabric. So we're going to add our leaf. So here's our little leaf that we have kind of shaped during the drying process. And on the pumpkin stem, there's some places, some eyelets. So you can place your leaf in whichever eyelet place you would like to. And the vine, which is kind of spiraling here, can just be placed up underneath the leaf in one of those little eyelets as you see here as well. Okay, so that's the complete pumpkin, and that's the best method that we have found to make it nice and straight and sturdy and so forth. All right, so let's look at some of our handy hints that we want to share with you. Again, we've talked a lot about stabilizing your fabric for the applique part prior to using it in the embroidery process, because we see that that has the best results. It will be sturdier and it will also last longer. We have seen where there are pictures that we've seen of ones that don't have any stabilizer, and we've also done that in the past as well. And so we find that it's a much better process to use the 2 pieces of sticky back cutaway stabilizer. And if you can't get the sticky back, then the heavyweight cutaway will work also. Now, let's talk about how we're going to store these. We actually occasionally will send ours out to stores for trunk shows and things like that. And so sometimes, and then we also have to find a place to store them here. So in storing them, we find that the best thing is for them to have their own separate container if that's possible. Now, the container that you get, it can be a cardboard box, it can be a plastic container, but be sure that if you were to put the lid down on top of it, that it doesn't smash it, because you don't want it to smash down, because that just causes the walls to crumble. And so try to be sure that the container that you use is large enough throughout that you don't have to worry about it being crushed at all. You can use some tissue paper or packing materials like those peanuts, or batting or fiberfill will also work to help keep your structure from being crushed. Now, if after packing and storing your project it is crushed, or like sometimes ornaments, they become very limp, then you can, what we have had to do occasionally is to take them apart and re-starch them. So we take our spray starch and spray and iron them on the wrong side, each of the pieces individually, and let them dry completely. And what this does is that it re-stiffens the pieces, so when you put them back together, then they are very, very much like the original. Now, if you don't have space to store them and you don't have any room, then the other alternative is to actually just take them apart, put them in a plastic bag with all their pieces together and with maybe a little note as to what it is, so that you'll know how it goes back together whenever you are done storing it. So if you put them in a plastic bag, then they will be flatter, and you would be able to have all your pieces. So those are some of the things that we have found to help them to stay longer. They're very nice structures and different things, but the houses, and we have done a haunted house, we've done the coffin and the little piece that goes with that. We've done boxes. So it just is really helpful if we can store them and put some stuff in them to keep them from crushing onto themselves. And it also helps the fabrics and everything too, to keep them from breaking down. Okay, so any questions that you might have as you are working on your projects or anything like that, you're welcome right now to go ahead and put in the chat box if you do have any questions. If after we are done here today you have questions, then you can email support@oesd.com. This session is being recorded, and we will have it up and available if, for instance, you want to watch it later, or you have some other people that didn't get to watch it today, then they can watch it. So, but know that this is being recorded. It will be posted on YouTube, and we'll let you know when that is available. If you like us on Facebook, then we will have information on Facebook as well. Okay? All right, does anybody have any questions for me? You're welcome to type them into the chat box, and we will answer any questions you might have. We want to thank you for coming this afternoon. We appreciate you taking your time out. And again, if you have any additional questions, you can email support@oesd.com. Okay, well, I don't see any questions coming through. So again, thank you very much for your time, and we hope you enjoy the freestanding projects that we have created, the lace and the applique designs. Thank you.